welcome. Thank you for showing up today. Glad you're here. Let's see what we've got. We have Kaylee. She is number one in the room first to start with. We've got beautiful, sweet Victoria, quiet listener. That would have been perfect, by the way, just having your icon there. You've got me. And you've got, oh, wonderful, sweet Catherine Cook. And I hope you all are having a great day. We're going to just have a little chat today again about we're going to finish up talking today about the Declaration of Independence. That is where we're at. And I think I found where we kind of left off at. Thank you so much, Catherine. So did you all get the opening of my I'm not on StreamYard. I'm not on YouTube. I'm on StreamYard. Let me close a couple things here I need to close up in order to better see where I'm at. All right. About our topic today. All right. Okay, so now I can focus better. And we have Richard Lake. Richard is here. Thank you, Richard, for turning on your phone and joining the group. So we've got hellos. So let's start off with, how is your weather? Really, seriously, because I mentioned on Roy and Becky today that if we get any more snow in the Willamette Valley, you're going to find me in bed, fetal position, covers over my head. I cannot take any more snow here in the Willamette Valley because it is creating a dynamic where we can't start working on any garden stuff. And, I'm ready. See, I'm done with winter and I'm ready for spring. If only God would listen. And I've said that a few times in my life.
I am listening.
Oh, Alex. Anybody who had snow does not have it now. You're lucky. Now, it's chilly out today. Hello, little sister Priscilla. Glad you are here. But I'm curious, did y'all get the beginning of the YouTube asking you a question? Did you get the little, that's what I'm trying to get to here. I'm switching over to YouTube for just a minute so that I can check that out. The poll that I gave. I'm real curious about that. And if you also saw some kind of guidelines, there were some guidelines up there today. And I'm going to go to my library so I can look at my, I need to go to, not my library. There were some guidelines for the chat today because we all know talking about these things can be stressful and there are interpretations. So I was talking with my sister today about this. And most of the time it seems like, yeah, that's straightforward. But that's a reason we have Supreme Court justices who all know this stuff, by the way, and are commonly split at some degree. So I'm just going to check out and see how that worked out. But I am curious who had the opportunity to see the Judy Smiley. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So you did read the guidelines, Priscilla. And Catherine, yes, answered the poll. All right. So did the guidelines seem sufficient? Because they can be changed. There are some suggestions. By the way, we all know what rudeness is. I know when I'm being rude. And I know when someone's being rude to me. Characterizing groups of people is inappropriate as whatever. Snowflakes, it's inappropriate. Or On the opposite side of that, what would be the opposite side of snowflake? Like, snowflakes is traditionally about liberals. What would be something that liberals call conservatives? Libtards. Oh, no libtards in this group. There's no libtards. There is no snowflakes. And there is no calling conservatives names either. You are welcome. Well, I don't just put it up there for the heck of it. I'm curious about it. I'm really curious about these things, or I wouldn't even be wanting to talk. I wouldn't waste. I just do a regular stream, people. It's much simpler in many ways. Well, in most ways, it's actually much simpler. I'm going to go to the details. So I'm glad you liked that. And now we'll just see if it worked. We'll see if it worked. Okay, so back over to StreamYard side. I saw poll and guidelines. All right, good. So I don't think anybody has to answer any of that. Well, you don't have to answer the guidelines. It's just a recommendation by me because I want conversations about these things in my chats to be respectful of beliefs about interpretations. Sometimes it seems like there shouldn't be an interpretation, but the fact of the matter is, as I said, that's yes, ma'am. Civil discourse, Kaylee, means polite discussion, facts, no defamatory declaratory statements. Thank you for participating. Yes, ma'am. Please post that a few times as we go through here, especially if things become heated, and no doubt there will be some different people who pop in here eventually. So I'm going to start this. Besides saying thank you to everybody, I do appreciate you being here. And Priscilla, you might ask your sister Nancy why she never comes. I know she's home. Now, I know she's my sister, but for some reason she will not come to my chats. Doesn't hurt my feelings, not at all. Okay, so I'm going to, you know what? I want to thank somebody. I want to thank a group of people.
You're welcome.
I want to thank the Cartel. They gave an apology for kid. Did y'all see? I'd asking her. She gets the invitation, the special silver platter invitation. So, I think and I hope that most of you know that 5 Americans were kidnapped right over the border from Brownsville a couple days ago, and 50% of them made it out alive and 50% did not. Someone was going in there for cosmetic surgery. I think it was a tummy tuck from what I understand. And so I'm so excited that the Cartel said, so sorry. We're sorry that we killed your people, and that some of us acted. There was a group of them that acted out of their rules of engagement. So I'm going to share that little piece of information here. Okay, it's a different share. I have it right here. Oh, here it is. Authorities received apology letter after abduction deaths of U.S. citizens in Mexico. We have decided to turn over. Those who were directly involved and responsible in the events, who at all times acted under their own decision making and lack of discipline. The letter reads, adding that those individuals had gone against the cartel's rules, darn them, which include respecting the life and well-being of the innocent. So I have friends that I really very much care about that are nomads and who do that, who go across the border. And as a matter of fact, I had seen one went across at Algodones just recently and posted a video about it. And I wish they had investigated first instead of being so rash. Well, they assumed that those vans were smugglers. So I think they were going to take their drugs and kill them, obviously. So just thank you, God, that the cartel can say so sorry for killing innocent people. In my IMO, I will never understand why anyone would go to a lot of places in Mexico. So apparently right now, and I didn't have time to confirm this, but I believe the U.S. is really cautioning the spring breakers about going. Really, this is not isolated. This is not the first group of people. This is not the first two dead Americans or others. And so, well, my suspicion is, because you know what? Their regular citizens make money, obviously, off of travel from the American border into their little towns, right there at Brownsville and Algodones, and of course, you couldn't pay me now, and I've really thought I really want to go into Algodones someday, and that's in the southern border of Arizona. I would love to go there. And I just saw Box Van D's video about going in there and having fun. And I think they do. And the people that live there and work there are wonderful people trying to make a living and live in their country in peace. And then they have this really out of control element in the cartels that nobody can control. Not the federales, certainly not any local police. And I'm just a little bit surprised that anybody still is going into these places right now. The State Department is warning Americans not to travel in a lot of areas in Mexico, especially where the attack happened. It's rife with several cartels who are at war. And Dee mentioned that when she went into Algodones, there were armed guards. Yes, there were armed guards. I don't think that's the norm. My suspicion is I've never seen another video where anybody talked about or showed. You can't really do videos going in there. So we don't actually see the crossing over most of the time. But honestly, when you have to pass armed guards, there's a problem. So I'm going to take one more drink of coffee and we'll get into it here.
I would like to say, though, there's armed guards at every border crossing.
Okay, so I've seen people going in. Okay, I've watched videos of people going into Mexico from Algodones mostly. And they, generally speaking, are not, they're not armed. I've never seen, that's the first one where anybody said, I had to pass through armed guards. And it was unnerving.
If anyone thinks that any of those guards are unarmed, they're out of their mind.
I'm not so sure the apology is from the cartel. It could be Mexican government trying to smooth this over. Yes, because the president of Mexico made a statement that they believed America was overstating the fear factor. Well, 50% of that group of people died, and he has no control of the cartels. So,
well, here's the question then. The question becomes, how do my cousins on my dad's side go to Mexico every year, maybe twice a year, and do explorations and all of this stuff with no security? Like, they don't have personal security with them. So, and they're all like pretty white people that would be good ransoms.
Okay. Yes, they would. Well, Brent, Alex, son, I'm not sure where they're going into or what airport they fly into.
It's on the West Coast.
It's on the West Coast. See, that's, no thank you. So Native Land Cloud Adventures posted, just showed the U.S. government website a map of what parts of Mexico are under travel warning. Is he having a live stream right now? All right. In the meantime, thank you for showing up, and we're going to talk about the subject at hand. I just wanted to throw that out there. One more drink of water.
Are you sure that's water?
All water. All water. All right. Move my coffee out of the way. Get my hands ready for my keyboard. Okay. So I'm going to bring up. So on the question. Okay. Thank you, Kaylee. On the question about the reason for, let me go up here. I need to gather my thoughts. Going to share the screen.
You know what you should talk about is the Oregon psilocybin program that's collapsed.
Well, that's just, yeah, not today, but we'll do a video. How about we do a video on it? All right. So the Declaration of Independence, just a little bit of history. The reason for the Declaration of Independence is stated right at the very beginning. And it was very interesting. Let me find it here. Why the Declaration of Independence? So if you think about it, there was a war. There was the Revolutionary War. And the Declaration of Independence is a declaration of leaving the British rule and starting the United States of America. And so that was the four main points about it is in the preamble, which is what I'm talking about, but also then the list of grievances, a formal declaration of independence, declaring themselves independent from British rule, and then the signatures. And the Declaration of Independence states the principles on which our government and our identity as Americans are based. That's imperative. And there was one specific thing.
Good thing you have it up and ready.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to find it. That really annoys me bad. I did have it up here. That's what's frustrating. I did have it up here.
I'm surprised you didn't show the apology.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did show. You didn't see it? Oh, I shared it. All right. So the point is that there's the three parts to the Declaration of Independence that is important to understand. It gave the reason why, why they had a right to fight, why they had a right to overthrow and leave that government behind, separate from that government. Okay. Let me get rid of the apology letter. And we'll bring up the Declaration of Independence now. We will add it. Okay. Are you seeing it now, Alex? Are you seeing the...
We see the Declaration.
Okay. That's what we're going to talk about. All right. So this is kind of where we left off. So I'm just going to go over this and read it. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having a direct object, the establishment of the absolute tyranny over the states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. So they wanted the world to understand that the King of Britain, this history that they did not want to live under any longer. They wanted to forge something new, something different, and ideally something better for them. And then it goes on to explain, he has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained and so suspended. He has utterly neglected to attend them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish their right of representation to the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together the legislative bodies at place unusual and uncomfortable and distant from the depository of their public records, and for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative house repeatedly for opposing with many firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. They were getting really fed up. He has refused for a long time after such disillusion to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable for annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, and the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws, naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their mitigation hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. So that right there would be a big problem. So when you depend upon what's the saying? He who calls the tune, he who pays the piper calls the tune. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So the purse strings, who holds those purse strings is the one in control. I cannot imagine let's see, the D of I has been and still looked to other countries to aid them in establishing and strengthening their own standing in the world and protecting their citizens. Well, yes, because it identifies some problems and it identifies some solutions. So it identifies the problem, it identifies the solution, and then ideally it gives the information on who's supporting that. Such as in our case, it was those first founding fathers. Yes, so let's get some specific dates on here just to be sure about this. What dates? End of Revolution. September 3, 1783 was the end of the Revolutionary War, and the Declaration of Independence was written originally published in 1776. So the Declaration of Independence was the kind of like, my suspicion is it was like the catalyst. It said, we're leaving. We're done. We're washing our hands of this, and we're going to start our new country. We are going to separate from British rule, and we are going to establish a new world, a new country. So it was originally published in 1776, and the end of the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War, excuse me, dates are the timeline. 1775. 1775 to 1783. 13 years. 13 years. 10. No. 7. No, it is 75. 8 years. Excuse me. It is 8 years. So there was 8 years of the Revolutionary War. And that would make sense that they did the Declaration of Independence itself in 1776. So it had been going on for a year prior to. I'd have to read more about that and see what exactly brought the Revolutionary War to the beginning. Well, it was the first fired shots done over. So that is, it basically makes sense to me. Basically, all right. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substances. Eat out their substance. Dang it. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. So there's another piece that's actually important to our current modern life. So he is affected to render the military independent and superior to the civil power. So that's why our government, so I would suspect that when those with brighter minds than mine, if I can see this, I bet that they could see it. So this, how our government, the three equal powers. We've got the legislature, or we've got the legislature, we've got the executive branch, and we have the judicial branch. So, and under all that is the different branches of everything. So those are the three equal powers. And the military does not stand above any of that. At least not now. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction of foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. So here's a question. This brings to mind for me, and I'm going to bring it up so I can watch the chat now. Okay, so first, the DFI came after the American Revolution. It was designed to establish rights for us. It was part of that, yes, but first it was to explain why war was necessary, why the war was necessary. So they gave that explanation, and this is part of that explanation. So that I'm glad that they did it that way, because or just an apology letter. No, I'm sorry. This lays it out more clearly in my mind anyways. So Simply Lisa is in Baja. She went through Algodón. I would not go. So, I'm a pretty brave person, and I really am excited for the day I feel safe to go to Algodones. That day is not right now. Not now. They cannot keep you safe. They just can't. Sorry. I wish they could. Okay, so after we beat the British. Yes, after we beat the British. So, what was I was saying something. Okay, so this brings to mind concerns people have over let's just use this one, the World Health Organization establishing rules that we would be obliged to follow legally. Do we want to allow, now we can, it's not that our government can't take, some direction or say, um, agree based on best scientific information that something's correct, but do you as an American citizen want any outside entity to decide what's right for you, people you have not voted for, people you do not know, the good and the bad of them? You know what I'm saying? Do you want these outside entities making decisions based on that will affect your life? One of them is that I have nothing against them, so I'm not pro or con World Health Organization. As a matter of fact, I look a lot of information I am interested in finding out. I go to the World Health Organization's website, I look it up, and I see what's going on. And so I'm not smashing them. I'm simply using them as an example because they have a lot of power and are looking for more power. How do you feel about that? Is there anybody who has a problem with that? Or not? If maybe you feel completely comfortable with these people making decisions for your government, that your government will just swallow, will put into effect. All right. For the quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of the states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond the seas to be tried for pretended offenses. I have to say, this is almost like some of the stuff that is happening today. I'm a little bit shocked as I go through this at it, truthfully, because some of these issues are happening today. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example of fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. Wow. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas and ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting the large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy. I have never heard that word in my life. Perfidy. Would somebody look up perfidy? Perfidy. And perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Oh boy. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and he has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So it appears that one of their gripes was that He engaged the Native Americans to fight against them and to do grievous damage. All right. We're getting close. Let me come over here and see if there's any comments or questions. Didn't go alone. She went with others who've been there before. You know, right now, it really doesn't matter. These people went in a group thinking that group would be okay, and it was not okay. Okay, so if we were to talk about which, let me just make sure I say hello to Badass 93 staying. Thank you. Thank you for popping in here. And then we've got perfidy, deceitfulness, untrustworthiness. Thank you, Kaylee. All right. That is honestly, Priscilla, I'm going to try and find a way to use that in one of our games that we play. Perfidy, Perfidy. Okay. All right, let's go back and let's look at what Priscilla's question is. Which issues are happening today that were happening then? All right. So I'm going to go back up here. So here's one I would say, Priscilla, that could definitely be, and I'm gonna enlarge this. Definitely be a question. So we know that there is legally there are people. Let's say you get into trouble, and you don't have money for an attorney. You have a state attorney, if you will. And like in the case of Lane County, where we live, most, as we know in an article written by the district attorney recently, the only people she had working under her were attorneys with average of 2 years of experience. 2 years of experience. And so in Oregon also, there have been what are the mandatory minimums. So you get somebody in there who has done a crime. Maybe it's a first-time offender. Maybe it's a second-time offender, third, whatever. So one of the things they do, as you know, they offer a, first of all, there is this mandatory minimum. You don't even get, you're going to get, if you get convicted of that, it's a mandatory minimum. Well, you take a plea deal, which takes away the jury piece of that whole pie. But you're generally speaking, these people get scared because they're told if they don't take the plea deal that they're looking at 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in prison. But we will give you this plea deal in order to clear this out quicker. Sometimes it's in the person's best interest. But my point is specifically, it removes the jury away from that process. Imposing taxes on us without our consent. So, as we know, people really are frustrated with the taxation system in much of the country, if not here in Oregon specifically. It is one of the issues that is at hand where people are very frustrated with the system of taxation. And they are, granted, we vote people in, but we do have to look at that and be cautious about when we vote for people. Being very mindful of what is their philosophy about taxation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, there many times people have complained that, and that would be when there are times when I'm trying to think of the city because I don't want to get it wrong. in Portland, Oregon, biggest city in Oregon. A few summers ago, there was tremendous violence on the streets of Portland. They were trying to burn down the federal building. And Portland government itself did not want the United States government to bring in help to have available there to protect the assets. So that was a political issue, which is part of this, but it's still something to think about. He is kept among us in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. So we have a standing army because, as most people must know, we're in more countries in this world than we can imagine. For some people, they don't like it. They don't want that much of an army. And then you come into a time like right now in the world where we're looking at being potentially the small dog on the block when it could be in our better interest to not be the small dog on the block. When we're talking about world war around the world and places where we're in helping. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent their swarm of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. So let's talk about 80,000 new IRS officers, about the new policy about looking at people's bank accounts at $600 or more. I'm going to go to the chat so I can see if that's kind of making sense. I think that's known as a list of grievances, stating the reasons for declaring the independence. Yes. Good afternoon, Victoria. I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much. If somebody could please drop Victoria's link and Badass 93 Sting, I would appreciate it. And if there's another, if you're a content creator, if you could just put a big CC in the chat to make sure your content or your channel gets a link dropped, I would appreciate it. And Kaylee will do that for me. Yes. There are definitely serious problems with the way we apply laws. At least we have them. We can do a better job of applying them rather than misusing them. Pleading is often badly misused. Yes. Steve and Tina Jewell, welcome, welcome. So glad you are here. Let's see. And yet we have the largest military budget. Yes, we do. We have the largest military budget. And there's part of that I know people question, because there are people who do not want us to have a large standing army. So what I'm saying is there are some similar concerns by people. So Steve, please make sure Steve and Tina's get dropped too. They have a wonderful channel. Wonderful channel. All right. And if you have a content creating channel, if you would not mind sharing out the link for this chat, I would appreciate it. I love meeting new people, making new friends. And I'm sure so does everybody else who makes content. All right. Could you please show your sources for the IRS agents issue? Because what I have read is they are going to replace retiring agents, adding more people to actually answering phones. Okay. I can't do that at this moment. But I'm going to pin your comment up here so that I can write that down and address it. If there's any other questions that I can't answer in this, I will be glad to look into that and do a video on it. Oh, and also more agents to root out tax evaders. Yes. So just as a short, I don't want to, get us off topic here, but I'm thinking, my personal opinion, I don't want to hit that. My personal opinion is that I almost would rather see a national tax, a certain whatever it would be that needs to support the things we have at the national federal level to pay for the things that people utilize, whether it be food stamps or it be so one of the pieces of my, as I think most everybody now knows, my channel, Life of Lucretia, is about life of Lucretia. Okay. And I have a whole life, a whole big life. And I don't mind sharing it. Some the good, the bad, and the like, why would she even say it? But that's, my point is I want to be authentic, and I can't talk about some of these things unless I am willing to be open about it. So I am one of the poor people in this world. I am on SSI. My husband is on SSI and Social Security. So we do receive food stamps. Ours was just cut in half yesterday. And that doesn't include the federal government's amount that they were giving to people for about 3 years. That was gone. We knew that was going away. We just found out yesterday we're losing half of it. And that's because of my husband's Social Security. So it's an interesting dynamic. I was very respectful of the woman I was talking to. She did let me know that she did, yes, a national sales tax. So she did let me know that will get, okay, I don't mean to be rude and disrespectful to anybody. Not that I think that about anybody here, but that will get everybody. That will get people who maybe, let's just say, parts of our underworld in this country that don't necessarily are not able to work, or they work. Prostitutes. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Prostitutes. They still have to buy toilet tissue. They still have to buy whatever. It will get something from everybody. Everybody will be pitching in. Everybody, not just a few people. And it will not be unequally yoked. So what I mean is that everybody will be paying in. Okay? Something. I know that may sound weird, but I just see it that way. To me, it's like an obvious answer. Yes. No sales tax on gold in Canada. Okay. The sales tax is going to be bad for the poor. If you're already poor, then a sales tax is going to suck up more money they already don't have. I understand. Okay, so I understand that, Priscilla. For some reason, it just makes sense to me that it will also get money from people who've never paid in, or they will never pay in. And they're not necessarily poor. I used prostitute just because it seemed like a no-brainer, all right? But there's lots of other situations where someone who is not paying in for whatever the reason, if it were a national sales tax, and I know it's not popular. I've got 10 people in this chat. I could tell you this subject is not popular, but it's a subject that I'm passionate about. Our country, the country that I live in, I'm passionate about the whole thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you, Van City Adventure. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Basics like milk and bread, no tax. Yes, baby formula, no tax. Diapers, no tax. I don't mind if you tax my cereal. There would be a way to do it rationally. Okay, maybe food, no tax on food, but other things, other things. Okay, you're right. They're called sex workers now. I've been informed it's offensive to call them prostitutes. It's a word often used by us oldsters, not necessarily with negative judgment. That's right. I know many sex workers, being an alcoholic and having gone to meetings that help us learn how not to drink. I have met a great many, a variety of people, and I love them. They're like in some ways, the most gut-wrenchingly honest people I've ever known. All right. So I hope that answered some of your question, Priscilla. If you read through all those grievances, you can see where there are issues from today. I'm just trying to go up here and look real quick. All right, so now if I can find where I was at. I was right at the end of this piece. All right. Okay, I believe we were here. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death. Desolation and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty. Oh, we've read that. Perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages. He has constrained our fellow citizens. We've done that. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and he has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers. Okay, we've already read that. By the way, he has excited domestic insurrections among us. What does that bring to mind? I can't pass by that without just stating the obvious after I take a sip of coffee for the energy. What does that bring to mind? He has excited domestic insurrections among us. Now, I could be wrong. Let's see if anybody comments. I'm just going to sit here for a minute and kind of look at the chat. So when a president, and by the way, I'm not just speaking of one president. When a president talks about, let's see, not just talks about, but identifies a group of citizens as such and such, and it's a negative connotation. Yes, Stephen Tina. So that obviously would be one. So the January 6th issue, insurrection at the Capitol. Unacceptable at many levels. So besides what he did or didn't do, police not acting, just so anyways, but he did. So unfortunately, he framed the whole thing in such a way that some really passionate and in some cases unstable people saw that as an opportunity or more than an opportunity, a dog whistle to go fix it and take care of it. There are nuances, and the workers themselves should be respected for so many reasons. Off topic, so I'm no, yes, Kaylee, 100%. Yes, absolutely. So, and I personally don't disrespect. I just use the old person terminology. Vancy, there are okay. I've already read that. So I would also suggest that, and in my own state again, what happened in Portland, the defund the police situation and being called on by a certain faction of citizens and local governments. That also has brought on, I don't think anybody can really declare it untrue, domestic insurrection, if you will. And I feel it's been terrorism at times. I believe Portland was terrorized at times by what was happening with their summer of violence. I know that I watched other cities be burned to the ground, sections of their cities be destroyed. In one case, it was a retirement center, a brand new old person's retirement center where people could get together and do things and have events, brand new, burned to the ground in their own community, harming their own businesses, destroying their grandmas and their grandpas and their aunts and their uncles' businesses. So that's kind of where I see that. All right, let's move on. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of the attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and have consanguinity. I believe that's the word. Consanguinity. Another new word for me. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separations and hold them as we have the rest of mankind, enemies of war and peaceful friends. Yikes. Equanimity. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of the right out to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace. So, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So, this is the states that signed. So for Georgia, interesting. Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton. Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, William Stone, Charles Carroll Carleton. Delaware, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean. Massachusetts, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Eldridge Gary. North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn. Virginia, George Wyeth, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton. New York, William Ford, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis Morris. New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkins, John Hart, Abraham Clark. Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery. Connecticut, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams. Oliver Wolcott. Massachusetts, John Hancock. Pennsylvania, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross. New Hampshire, Whoops. Joshua Bartlett, William Whipple. I wonder if he was related to Mr. Whipple. Squeezing the Charmin. New Hampshire, Matthew Thornton. So that is the American Declaration of Independence. And I have to say, I am really glad to have read through it. Again, I know it's not like what everybody's running to, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. Let's read what's going on. I'm going to stop the sharing of that little piece of information. Comparing Portland to 1/6 is a false equivalency to 1/6 equivalency. Attacking the federal government to stop a fair election is insurrection as addressed in the Constitution. Yes, I'm only saying that when a government, so that's a federal insurrection. I think insurrection can happen at a state level as well. And I believe the state government in Oregon did, first of all, they incited it and they did nothing to intervene, nor did they want an intervention. What did they do? I mean, really, how long did it take to get Portland that particular problem or issue dealt with? So for me, it's not the same in the outcome. No, of course not. So the presidency is more important overall. But when a government, be it a federal government, a city government, a state government, a county government, provokes that kind of violence that was provoked, and in other cities across this country that were provoked, it's unconscionable. And it's just another way insurrection. For me, it's another form of insurrection. No, it's not trying to overturn a federal election. No, obviously. But it did grievous damage and it terrified people and it destroyed communities. Thank you, Kaylee. Consanguinity, the fact of being descended from the same ancestor. Okay, that's really consanguinity. 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 All right. Consanguinity. There we go. Rectitude, morally correct behavior. I knew it was in that class. Thank you, Kaylee. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know that this is not the most fun conversation, but I know there's people interested in the country. I know people see that there are some problems out there, and that there's people who have never, I've never read it until recently, top to bottom. And normally it's pieces, I'm looking for pieces for information on a very specific thing. Well, so I feel they were provoked by the attitude of the government of the city of Portland. And again, so that's something that I can go back and, and then we could potentially have another conversation about, because first of all, the attitude about the police by the city of Portland administrators was awful. And I'm going to just pinpoint Portland right now because it's here in Oregon. I don't remember the names of the other cities that really suffered. Suffered. I was scared to death for people in these communities. And I think Maryland is one of them. I could be wrong. Somewhere in Maryland was one of them. And I believe St. Louis was another one. And when there has been, unfortunately, this horrible death of Mr. Floyd, shocking death of Mr. Floyd, and the consequence of that, there were cities that did not intentionally did not try to step in and stop the violence. It was obvious. They didn't even, in one city, I think you probably remember some of the video we watched. Like I was up all night on several occasions, watching this violence unfold in these cities, and the police not even being there to help, not even being there, because nobody wanted to appear to be saying, anything short of, yes, we know that the George Floyd murder was murder and that we can't allow that to happen. And so this uprising of anger amongst people seemed to me that it was supported by these cities because they didn't actually send any police in to help, or very limited. And the firefighters couldn't even get in to put out fires because there was no police protection. And so to me, that is in the same family, kind of maybe stepsisters or something like that. That would be great, Kayla. Yes. Babysitting. I followed the protesters in Portland, including the violence. Never once heard an Oregon government official speaking to the masses, urging the violent behavior. So sometimes it's not the open urging of violent behavior. It's the lack of reaction to that violent behavior. It's like when my son was a toddler, when Brent would, when Alex would get really excited, and he was just a little toddler, probably before he was 1 or between 1 and 2, when he was at that one daycare, I got a report from her that when Brent would get excited in a happy way, he would bite somebody. He would, he's just so excited. He bit. And my response to that biting was a definite, we're not biting. And I bit him back. I remember biting him back after a couple of events of that. I finally bit him back. And it kind of helped with the biting. There was a point where the biting stopped. We addressed the biting aggressively because she said we can't have him here if he bites. I understand that. Okay. And oops, let me just go up here for a second. We had Freedom Rally in Canada lock down the Canadian capital. I know, I watched that, and in that moment, I wish I was a Canadian. It took a lot of courage to do that. In my estimation, what happened in that freedom, the Freedom Rally in Canada took a lot of courage. And, as we all know here, one of the only real way to make change is to vote for the things, for the people and the things that you feel are going to better your area. And so that's what I've tried to do. I failed, I have voted for people. I will be honest. And I think most of I voted for Donald Trump the first time around. I absolutely did because of our southern border. The main reason I voted, because I agree with, or whether or not he really believes it or agreed with it, he was doing something about it. He was trying, and he was going to, and he did as much as he could in the time he had. So that is imperative to know that, everybody makes mistakes. Okay, so I have to go back and look, and I'm not saying there weren't times, Priscilla, but I think we also know how long. Okay, let me look it up. There's so many misguided, unstable people. Heck, in Philly, some people flip cars and start fires over football games. Oh, I know. It's just bizarre. Now, why did they lock down Canadian capital? Okay, so Steve and Tina, if you could share why it was, what's the core issue that created the Freedom Rally? To someone who might not have followed it closely, or from the Canadian person's point of view. Okay, you being a migrant who chose Canada, what is your perspective? If you want to, you don't have to share it, but it would be really cool. Seattle too. Seattle place. I mean, really? I used to and should start doing so again. I listen to BBC and Canadian news to get the perspective of others looking at the US. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so you followed it. You followed it from an American's point of view, and I did too. What I did do though is I followed several. I followed several Canadians who were out amongst the people. That's what I did. I followed several Canadian YouTubers who just were in the public. They were right down there in the thick of things, talking to people. And that's what I wanted to know. What does the average Canadian that's sitting here willing to put their jobs and their money and put it on the line? Put it on the line. What are those people there for? So Steve and Tina Jewell, here's the deal. COVID mandate to have the jab. And that's it right there, I believe. Yes. So my understanding, and let's see what else. Truckers had to have the jab or could not cross the borders. Right. Thank you very much, Steve. Very appreciative. Priscilla, Steve and Tina Jewell, where were they forcing everyone to get the shot, or was it only medical workers? No, this was the truck drivers. So do you remember that truck drivers could not cross the border over into the United States and back into Canada without being vaccinated? And that they didn't like being forced to do that. And many other workers too. I know. I do know that. I understand that. Now, so speaking of the Declaration of Independence, so kind of tying it into the Declaration of Independence, I'm going to go back here. Well, that's discussed a little bit. The government I'm just going through real fast the grievance. So I believe, depriving, transporting, abolishing free system of English laws, boundaries to that. Funding the forms of government. Okay. So I think this. So in the Declaration of Independence, where it states in every stage of, he's talking about being oppressed. And I think that there is a great many people in Canada and in the United States, as we know, have felt oppressed related to the mandate situation. Firemen and policemen, I get you there. Yes. We already been over that. I guess if you're trying to end a pandemic that's killing many, the government has the absolute right to do what is necessary to protect its citizens. So there's another starred Priscilla. So if we go back to, so that ties in with people feeling oppressed, very much feeling oppressed and wanting out from under that oppression, that oppressiveness, and that there has been the whole time opposition information that said that these things weren't necessarily going to help or going to help minimally. And was it worth the job of a truck driver bringing you goods to your home, to your store for your home? Should he or she be forced not to be able to do that, which also created backlogs of stuff, and the not being able to cross the borders. So, and just the fundamental, was it safe? And I still know that I know that that's a legitimate question. And it was a legitimate question then because they had little to no information about the long-term outcomes. They couldn't possibly. And now we do know, and I'm going to try to bring it up. I'm going to go real quick find it. CDC. Oh boy. We know that because there's so many different variations that happen pretty quickly, that it wasn't necessarily as effective as they I think had hoped. Obviously, I mean, I think everybody had hoped it would. I've had 3 injections. I likely won't get any more because of that very reason. And I'm not, I know how to take care of. I wash my hands. Like today, I was at the doctor's office. The last thing I did before I left there, I used the sanitizer. I'm looking at information here. I have to be careful because I think everybody knows YouTube channels that have had their streams taken down, that have had their, grievously affected by talking about this subject openly in an open forum type of way where you're trying to figure things out together. And I'm looking at the CDC data tracker real quick here. I have no doubt that to a degree, using a mask helped a little bit. I don't believe it was the be all end all. And there has been information that has come out that said that's kind of the situation because of the kind of masks that we had access to. I'm still looking to find something I can share with you real quickly. It's kind of hard to do on the fly, but I'm trying. I think I'm going to have to just put this off to doing some research on it because I'm not going to give information that's going to get me into trouble or give you misinformation because that's not. So as Priscilla's, I'm going to go back to Priscilla's question. I guess if you're trying to end a pandemic, yes. If you're trying to end a pandemic that was killing many, the government has the absolute right to do as. I don't necessarily agree with that. I really don't. They should not be able to force people to have a livelihood or else. It's really that is treading on ground that feels very foreign to me as an American, as a human. Food shortages, yes, absolutely. Food shortages. I think some folks in the US who don't understand the concept of freedom as it applies to US citizens, it doesn't mean we are free to do whatever we want. That's right. Whenever we want, society has rules. Yes, it does. I wouldn't have, for instance, went into a daycare without a mask on or having, washed my hands. So that's a good question. Do we trust the people that might be getting paid by the drug companies? It's a legitimate question that people have a right to ask, and when and have it answered. Have it answered. And I don't know that question can be, do I trust the people if they're making laws and getting even backdoor deals with drug companies? No, I don't trust them. I don't trust them. We're living in a society of rights with no responsibility to others. And that may be seen that way. But you and I both know people who have not been vaccinated, who are very caring, responsible people. Caring, responsible people. And that does not mean that they don't feel responsible. It just means they're concerned about having really and true, honestly, limited information. And we did. And we still do. Lucretia then explained why rate of seven severe infection and death dropped and continues to after the vaccine started. I tell you what, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because when these medical professionals now say that we're talking the people that were, in the center of evaluating these things, come out and say that the mask really probably didn't help much. I don't know what to say about that. And I have a right to question that. I have a duty to question that, because I will never be someone who just follows along because someone says so. All right. I wore my mask most of the time, and especially I wore it always when it was required. Absolutely, I did. But I also washed my hands or sanitized my hands in the midst of all of that, when it was especially really bad. Of course, I took precautions that made common sense to me. When it was commonsensical to me, I did things like that. But you tell me why they're saying now that the mask might not have been actually overly helpful. I'm not the professionals. Okay, if masks didn't help, then explain why the flu virtually non-existent. Explain why the professionals are saying the mask likely wasn't as useful as they thought it was. Okay, I can't explain these things. Are they lying about or mislead? Why? I don't think most people, especially the professionals that were developing things or trying to figure out how do we keep these people from piling up in New York City in cold coolers that had died because they had no place to put them. I think they were panic stricken about what to do, and they were doing the best that they knew how to do. And however, when things are like written in stone, like they absolutely knew, I don't believe that. I don't, because as it turns out, it was likely not completely accurate. Mask did help. Some cite the size of the virus being able to pass through the mask travels in moisture from our breath, largely trapped by masks. We had 3 jabs and we're told it wouldn't only need 80% to protect everyone. Then it changed to wanting everyone done. So those kind of changes are things that I know that most of us questioned. Even at some time, Priscilla, I know you questioned those kind of things. And it does become confusing. And then it makes it easier for those that want to incite a bad attitude to grab a hold of and say, well, look at this. So we do at times have to use our own, kind of our own brain, what makes sense. Okay, so we're going to go for 10 more minutes, and then we are going to end. In order to understand it, one would need to understand biology of a virus. That's true. And that's why I say, and I'm not being snarky, when those professionals come out and say, it likely didn't do that much good, what am I to think? And that people lost jobs, and that people were vilified. They were denigrated publicly at unconscionable levels for questioning that. Okay. And we both know that happened to people. And now they just say, I don't know. No, I'm talking. All right. Well, I'll find the information again. And because that's not what we were going to be talking about. But since we're talking about how people become frustrated and feel repressed by their government, oppressed by the government, that's how we kind of got onto this topic. Going to have to star you again, Priscilla. So the star means it's a question I can come back to later and try to figure out. Who are they that is saying this about masks? It came out from one of the major medical organizations. I'm not going to say who it was because I don't remember, but it was a major organization. Okay, so there's a good question. So it's saved from the flu, but at what cost? That's a legitimate question. So at what cost? And if there were legitimate, like at Walmart, I know what one of the things Walmart did was they put in place the in front of the checker, the the little window thing. I think that's very helpful and that's reasonable, so that people can still go to work and people can still shop. I don't know what you mean. Priscilla, that's not my intent. I didn't know we were going to go into this conversation. I did not realize that. And so I'm not trying to play anything. It's just, it's one of the pieces of the conversation. I'm simply saying that it's a fact that you asked a question about the Canadian situation there. And that was answered. And then the discussion about some of the medical issues involved. And so here we have, someone commenting about, yes, it's safe from the flu, but at what cost? And there's a cost, yes. And you and I have discussed these things. So I'm not sure. That feels very attacking. I get what you're doing here, and I'm not playing. That feels very attacking to me because I'm doing nothing to play. I'm not trying to manipulate or connive, which is kind of what you're saying there. And I'm not intentionally. That's why I've starred your questions, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to find the information. But I don't have a citation dictionary in my brain to be able to say about something I wasn't prepared for. I'm simply trying to say that these are legitimate questions people were asking about, and we have a right to know. I have a right. Maybe you don't have a need to know. I have a need to know as much as possible. And so do people whose lives were upended in this manner. Absolutely. And that's why I want to get that information specifically and be able to provide it. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm not being biased. I don't believe I'm being biased. I'm simply you asked a question, somebody commented, you asked a question, and we're having the conversation. I am surprised you didn't know that they being a major medical organization as commented, made after studies were done, that the mask was likely not as useful as they had hoped it would be, for a couple reasons, mainly because of the size of the bacteria, and also the way our masks fit that we had access to up until we were able to get a hold of the what is it called? The the better masks. They didn't fit in a way. One of the reasons people were getting sick when they were still wearing the mask, okay, is because the masks were not made to fit in a way that would protect from a really serious situation. And by the way, when the potential for an even worse medical problem is out there, I would think we would want to tear this apart and figure out what truly worked, what didn't work, and what was just misinformation on both sides. What was just response to fear? What was response to trying to find out how do we keep people from dying by the thousands every day, okay, which is legitimate requirement of the government, and how is what we're telling people right information, or are we just stabbing in the dark because people lost their jobs, incomes? And that's not biased. I'm sorry, but that's not biased, because I'm saying that I believe most, the medical people trying to come up with an answer, were trying legitimately to come up with an answer. But to tell us that certain things were fact when they were not fact isn't fair either. So, yes, they were tasked with an ungodly job. And I really do, I have to say, I'm disappointed that you would believe that I'm being biased about that. Kids now miss 2 years of education. Okay, and look at the suicide rate of children. Kids, grade school, junior high, high school. The suicide rate skyrocketed during this. That's real. And what's the trade-off? Her and I love each other tremendously. We have had, trust me, Kaylee, we're a family of 6 female siblings. We have had these conversations, and it's not the first, and it will not be the last. I don't think I've been biased here. I'm stating that, yes, the medical people were tasked with a horrible situation. And some of the medical people tried to say things that they knew and they admitted behind the scenes were not effective. That's not right. That's not fair, because people lost livelihoods behind that. They lost careers behind that. People suicided behind that because they lost everything. So my saying is that my belief is the trade-off has to be looked at. And again, when there could be something even worse than this come down the pike at some point in time, whether it's our lifetime or not, I think, considering how serious this was and all of the elements that were involved financially, internationally, all of the jobs lost, the people that died, the suicides, the drug use that's escalated, the abuse that's escalated during the lockdown. I think it's common sense tells me that we need to find out what worked, what didn't work. And when we find out something didn't work just because it didn't work, are we going to vilify the people who said it didn't work, that knew it wasn't working, that knew it wasn't going to work? So anyways, Kaylee, thank you. And yes, she is my best friend. I love her. She loves me. And we just have some difference of opinion. But again, I don't think I'm being biased. I'm working extra hard at not being biased. Hello from Colorado. Hope you're having a blessed day. Just home from work. Thank you, Alfonso. Very, very glad you're here. Hello. All right, Kaylee. We're nearing the end of the stream, but it's always nice to see you. And absolutely, Kaylee, it's nice to see everybody who came today. And so Steve, it would be nice to know the specific things she feels I was biased about. I'll get it. I'll find out. I know that I've starred. I thought she would be happy. I'm going to do some research and likely do a video about it, about her questions. I really, because I want to have accurate information. I want to be able to tell her exactly which medical organizations has done the research and said, the comment about the masks. But it is easier to leave. I understand that. I've done that a few times in my life with YouTube. I've checked out of a conversation. I believe masks help Some cite the size of our, yes, ma'am. 100% true. Thank you, Richard, for staying tuned in. Masks don't fit well. Yes, the fit of the mask is one of the problems. The standard mask we all, like the one I had in the medical doctor today. Well, Oregon's getting ready to drop their mask mandate in medical offices. It's not there right now as it is for other places besides medical, but it was still in medical facilities. There is this proposed date. I believe it's April 3rd, I believe. Medical facilities will no longer be required to make you wear a mask. Now, does that mean you shouldn't wear a mask? I may wear a mask of some sort because I have the N92 or N95, whatever it is. I have an N95 somewhere. When I go to if I have to go to an emergency room and sit in the emergency room, I might wear an N95. Just saying. But I'm not wearing a blue mask. They don't really work because they don't fit your face. All right, Kaylee. I'm going to say reattach was supposed to say research. No, I know, honey. I know. And I'm looking forward to getting that information. Tanzania did not lock down. Okay. Do you have any? Okay. So maybe, I mean, I'd like to know any info. I'll look at, so since I have a viewer that's from Tanzania, I will I'm going to tag your comment here, and I'm going to look and see what the rate of illness was. I'm going to see what the rate of death was related to COVID. I'm very curious about that. So there's one that did not lock down, and I'm going to look at it and see how it compares to the United States. There was censorship at the time, and there's a very much censorship. Yes, nobody. So there was a decided amongst a group of people. There was a decided approach. If you mentioned anything outside of that approach, you were banned. You were shut down. You were censored. It doesn't matter who you were. It does not matter how many degrees in medicine you had. You didn't exist any longer. When I said size of virus, I hope you go back and stream and read the rest of the comment. Yes. Yes, ma'am, I will. I will. I know what you mean, exactly what you mean, because that's part of the problem. So, all right. Let's take a deep breath. Regroup. Thank you so much for showing up, for joining the conversation. I mean, at some level, I feel like I need to apologize, but you know what? I'm not apologizing for somebody else. I mean, Priscilla has a right to her viewpoint, just like, you know, anybody's experience in this, we all have the right to share our experience with it. Yes, I have an obligation if I'm sitting here talking to you about this to share accurate information. And that is what my goal is to do. I didn't want to make an emphatic statement about something, but I do know that was that's fairly recent in the last couple of months. That information has come out about the mask insufficiency, shall we say. And yeah, see, I'm not a person that can be muzzled, really. I also have an account with Rumble, and I probably will do a channel with Rumble as well. You know, they don't have the same philosophy of censorship. Sometimes it just one of the ways to censor people, by the way, in all honesty, is to don't watch them. Find out they're full of crap and don't watch them. All right, Kaylee, thank you. I appreciate you all. Please stay healthy, stay safe. And by the way, the next time I believe we'll go into, well, we're going to start with the next one is the Constitution. So we'll read through the Constitution. It may take us a couple of different readings, maybe 2 or 3. Okay, at least 2, but likely 3. I do not want to just run through it because we want to talk about the pieces of it that matter to each one of us. And thank you, Kaylee, for the thumbs up. So stay safe, stay healthy, find out what your passion is, and make that happen.